Hello and welcome to Computer Science 440, game number 3, created by Alex Brown. As in the previous two videos, I'll be going over my code first, and then towards the end of the video, I will be demoing the game itself. So I'll start with my H files as usual. In this game, I have 7 files, 3 classes, and then a main file. In my projectile class, this is where I shoot the weapon towards across the screen. I have my standard H file stuff with the constructor and deconstructor. This is where I draw the fireball, since that's what I'm using as my projectile. It's a blue fireball. This draws it to the screen. This one activates the fireball if the user has pressed the space bar, and this will update the movement of the fireball as across the screen. And then this function checks if it hits a bad guy, and if so, it does its own logic, which I'll explain shortly. And this one just makes sure the fireball is active. These are all my variables, the X and Y, the speed at which it moves across the screen. This one is for if it's on the screen or not. Oh, this is the pixel. I guess this is an old variable. I forgot to remove it. And then this is the bitmap for the projectile. Come in here, my CPP file. I set all my variables in the constructor and I load my bitmap here. I had trouble with the transparency because in the videos it was said the PNG does it automatically, but it wouldn't work for me, so I had to use the convert alpha mask to alpha for every bitmap in the classes. This is my deconstructor. I'm just destroying the bitmap here. This is the draw fireball, which I actually forgot to comment this. There we go. And if it's alive, it'll draw it in its new position. And it's also a rotated bitmap since your ship is at an angle, and this will correctly go in the direction your ship was heading when you shot it. I forgot a comment for this one too. Terrible of me. Also missed this one. I apologize. All right. And then this one just checks if it's not active currently, since you can only have one on the screen at a time, but it can go through multiple enemies, so you can get a multi-kill with it. So I figured that was fair enough. Anyway, if it's not on the screen, then it grabs the coordinates of the player and then activates the fireball. This function, like I said, simply updates it. It makes sure it's active first, so it is on the screen, and then using the cosine and sine, it angles the trajectory correctly. These are just bound checking against the 3 walls. You'll never have the fireball go to the left, so I don't have that coded in because there's no need, but this checks the other 3 walls of the screen. And if it hits any of those, then it's no longer active. This checks the projectile on the mutalisks collision, so weapon on enemy collision. It's basically roughly the same code as from the previous lab, where you check all the positions of the bounds, and then you set the enemy as false since it dies. And here I increase the kill count of the player. So largely the same. Up in my player class, as you'll see, it's similar as the other file, just different functions for everything. This one draws the player. This draws my picture of the damaged ship, because I use 2 different images, because in Starcraft, that's what I'm basing my game off of, a Starcraft theme, is that you have units that you control, and then there's like a little box in the interface that shows a smaller picture of that unit, and it has a tint to it. Well, like green if it's healthy, yellow if it's damaged, a different yellow if it's heavily damaged, and red if it's critically damaged. So that's what the draw hull is I have different pictures of my battle cruiser, which is the unit I'm using, to display the damage to your ship. This just gets the lives you have left. You have 5 lives. Every time you take a hit, you get 1 life left. So this just returns that value. This is used to reduce a life by 1. That's what that function does. This just gets the X and Y values of the battle cruiser. It's pretty plain to see. This function I'm no longer using. I forgot to take it out, but I wanted to give the player a health boost, but ultimately I decided against doing it because it was a little bit annoying to code through. So I scrapped it. This returns the health of the player since I use the health to determine some other factors in setting variables. This is just incrementing the kill count. This returns the number of kills. Uh, this is the current level of the player, and this returns the level of the player. These are all my private variables, typical X and Y with bound X, bound Y. The one for lives, how many lives you have left, your current health bar. Since the battle cruiser in Starcraft 2 has 550 health, that's what I have in here. And every time you take a hit, you lose 110 health. Normally, that's not the case in Starcraft, but I figured I'd try and keep things as close to the game as I could. This is just a variable for the level and the number of kills and all my bitmaps. This one is for the actual battle cruiser that you use, and these 4 are for the image when you take damage. Onto my CPP for the player. I left this in too because I was testing. I missed taking that out as well, so just ignore it. This is now typical constructor. I load all my bitmaps here. I convert them all here. I set the coordinates that I want, and I also set the variables to what I want. Deconstructor just destroys all the bitmaps. Here's my draw player. I take the angle that the player is currently moved to, and I use that as the angle variable to rotate the ship correctly based on the bound values. Like I said, this draws the hull, the picture of the ship to show how much damage you've taken. If you're at 5 lives, it draws the green one. If you're at 4 lives, it draws the first yellow one. If you're at 3 or 2 lives, it draws the more damaged yellow one. It's a darker yellow. And then if you're below 2 lives, so 1 and 0, you're in the red. And then I also set the health accordingly based on the lives. These functions just get all the values, simple setter and getters, nothing special. Here's my enemy class. It's set up mostly the same way with X values, bound X. This draws the enemies to the screen. This activates them. This moves them. I check for collision among each other because I like that from lab 7, I believe, where the bad guys cannot collide on top of each other. So I implemented that as well. This just checks if the mutalisk is currently alive. I'm setting them alive here. I'm returning alive there, and I'm setting the speed. I kind of dropped the ball a little because this is no longer used as well, but I'll just leave that in. I'll clean up the code before I submit it shortly after I complete this video. These are all my private variables as usual, X and Y, a variable to know if they're active or not, so alive, uh, the speed at which they move, and then the bound variables. And the two bitmaps I use. Although again, I no longer use a second enemy, so I need to remove that before I submit my code. I apologize for the slight sloppiness. All right, on to my enemy CPP. I again load the bitmap and also set my variables. Nothing special. Destroy the bitmap. This is where I draw the enemy, as the other two are. This is where I activate the attack. I forgot to comment here again. There we go. I use the same ran function since I liked that in the other lab. I tried experimenting with it a little, but it was either too fast or too slow. So 500 is a good number. Anyway, I get an X and Y value. Since they're always on the right hand side of the screen, I have it as the width and then a random Y value. And here I check for collision the same way I did in lab 9, I believe. I use a function to determine if the current X and Y value uh, collides with any of the alive mutalisks currently. And if they do, then I do not have the mutalisk active. So the mutalisk is only active if this returns false. This is simply setting the level and also advancing the enemy. So I check if their kill count is a certain level, and then I set the level to that. So there's 3 levels in total. And I increase the X speed there. And then if this is the boundary collision for the battle cruiser, because the battle cruiser is about X equals 175. So if it's less than that, then the player takes damage and the mutalisk is also destroyed. This is the collide function for each other. For the mutalisks, it's built the same way as the previous lab, where if this statement is true, a collision is true, and otherwise there's no collision. So this is what is called here, and it returns this value. If it's true, the mutalisk is not active, and if it's false, the mutalisk is active. These are just a bunch of setter and getters for all those variables. I did like how you had some of them like this, so I did like half and half, although I could have put all these inside of here with this type of format, but I chose not to. And that concludes all the main files. Now onto the main. All my constant variables that I need, all the number of shots and enemies, the size of the ship, uh, the dimensions of the screen, and also the maximum kills for the player. So once you hit 50 kills, you win. If you die before you get 50 kills, you lose. Here are some more variables. I'm not entirely sure I use these anymore. I'll have to check later as I scroll down the menu. But again, I'll clean up the code later before I turn it in. These two have to do with the angle. So this one is the actual angle of the ship, and this one is used only for the projectile. So once I press the space bar, I set the projectile angle to the angle. So that way the projectile doesn't uh, change the way they're shooting if you press the space bar again or something, or if you move the ship. Because I had instances earlier where I would shoot the fireball straight, but if I move the ship up or down, the projectile would move up or down as well, but still go straight. So it was rather funny, but this prevents that from happening, so it's all in the correct trajectory. We use just the key values, like in the labs, initial setup, all the Boolean values for the loop. Uh, Done is for the escape or close menu, so if they close out the game closes instantly. I don't have them wait at all, instantaneous. And the game over is when they either die or get 50 kills. So then it'll activate other code and there'll be a pause at the end. Again, just initial setup. This is where I load all my fonts. I do have the same font several times, but I changed the size of them, which I actually didn't realize until about an hour ago, where I could have different sizes of the text, because a lot of the text I was choosing, specifically from, say, game 2, the text was too big and I did not know I could modify it. So that was very helpful. So overall, I use 3 different fonts. Starcraft. I wanted to use Starcraft for everything, but I also wanted more than one font. But since StarCraft fit the actual theme, since I'm modeling this after StarCraft, I really wanted to just keep it, but I, I forced myself to use different ones. This one is pretty cool. I mainly use this for like headers. Otherwise, it's kind of ugly if you have it purely on text because it puts a circle around every first letter or capital letter you have. This is just standard text mostly for the instructions, and then this is for the game over screen mostly. Here I load my 2 backgrounds. The first one is my normal background for the game, and the second one is for the beginning game screen where it gives you instructions on how to play. So before you even play the game, the start screen happens, and it's just a bunch of text to the screen with the starting background that I picked. So uh, nothing too fancy, but I enjoyed doing this more than other stuff in this game. But it just gives you a little bit of a story. Be like Kerrigan is trying to kill you with 50 mutalisks. You need to kill them all to survive, and then just a bunch of instructions. And then you can press any key to start the game. Now, in order to pause it before starting the actual game, I had to move the timer down here, so otherwise the mutalisks would already be attacking by the time you pressed a key, and you'd be dead most likely. So that's why I moved it down here, and then I just wait for an event to happen. Uh, Pretty much, you can press any key and the game will start instantly, but if you press escape or close out the window, it'll just close instantaneously, like in the normal game. So it functions the same exact way, but it prevents the game from starting automatically without a wait time. So this will wait until the player presses a key before continuing into the main game. Here's my game loop, standard procedure with the waiting for the event. This is the timer where I redraw the function, and based on the key press up or down, I do not use left to right since I did left to right on the screen, so my ship moves up and down instead of left and right. I wanted to do something different, so I liked that instead. And since it's the same setup, it's just different keys, I figured that'd be okay. And anyway, this checks the boundaries of the angle. So if the angle is greater than -1.1, it'll increment it by 0.05. But once it's greater than this, then, or once it's less than that, then it no longer moves up. In the same way, uh, it works the same way when going down. I update all my bitmaps here. Just here I activate the mutalisks to see if one is going to spawn. Here I advance them all, so I move them across the screen. This just updates my projectiles with updating the movement and also checking for enemy collisions. And that's all there is to it for the timer. And very simple. If they close the screen, it just closes automatically. Typical event key down. I set all the variables to true. And if they press the spacebar, I'll automatically fire the shot to the screen. And this is where I set the variable, like I said a few minutes ago, where as long as if the shot is not active, then this variable doesn't happen. Because otherwise, as I said, the projectile will shift the way your ship shifts if you move up and down after firing it. This prevents that from happening. So if you can fire it straight and move the ship up and down and try and fire again, and the projectile will still be going straight and with the correct image. This sets all my variables to false, except the escape key if they're not pressing a key. So nothing fancy there. And here's my redraw function. I redraw back to false. I clear everything on the screen and draw my background again. And this is where I display all my text to the screen, the current kills, your current health, and the level at which you're at. Here is where I simply draw the player and draw so this draws the battle cruiser, and this will draw the picture displaying your health, basically. Green, yellow, dark yellow, or red, depending on how many lives you have. And health is tied to it. This is where I simply draw the bad guy, typical for loop, just drawing for however many enemies I have selected, which I set to 10 in this video. I did have it at 15, but when I was testing, it proved too hard. And I also wanted 100 kills, but again, it proved too hard. After 10 attempts, I could not get past like 25 kills. So I reduced it to 50, and I also reduced the number of enemies to 10. So, and after testing again, it was moderately difficult to get to 50. So sometimes I failed. Well, most of the time I failed, but I did pass it a few times, other than getting completely decimated, setting it to 15 and 100. All right. Here, I do the same thing with drawing the fireball. So it just draws the fireball in the correct position that it's fired. I just flip the display here, and that's pretty much the entire program. Down here, this is where I set the game over variable. If you've run out of lives or you've hit the 50 kills or whatever variable you set it to, then the game is now over. So it exits the while loop, since I have not done and not game over up here. Once one of those triggers or you press escape, it'll clear everything, draw the background again, and then here is my game over screen. Now, assuming it's a game over, so this does not activate at all if the user pressed escape or closes out of the window. So it skips over this entirely. And like I said, as soon as you escape or click the X, it closes the game instantly. It doesn't wait for anything. Exactly how you would want it. Anyway, this displays the game over text, and this checks if your kills is less than the maximum kill ratio. So if you have 49 kills and this is 50, then that means you lost and you basically died, and it displays these two messages. And if this isn't true, that means you won. So it displays these two messages. You obliterated the Zerg, mission accomplished. And then no matter what, it displays your final kills out of 50, which I should change this to a variable since I am using a variable here. So I should change that as well. Then I just flip the display. And then once this game over screen has happened, the game will wait 7 seconds before closing automatically. And that ends the code portion of this game. I will say the hardest part of this game was making all of my images, because thankfully I had dual booted my computer. So I have Ubuntu with a handy programming tool, well, not programming tool, editor called GIMP, which allows you to edit pictures very nicely. So it took some time getting all the images correct, specifically the backgrounds, because I would make them black backgrounds for the transparency effect, but then when I put them in, I guess they were different color of black on some of them, so it'd have a rough edge around them. So GIMP allowed me to go through and fix all of that. It was the most time consuming part of this assignment, but it was also rather fun. But I had to do that for every single image. So the mutalisk, all of the images here, and also the projectile, the backgrounds I didn't have to do anything with, since all I had to do was scale them to the screen width. But I did find the trajectory a little bit tricky, but looking through the notes, I noticed you used the sine and cosine, so you practically gave us the code for that. So that was very helpful. Um, I believe that covers everything, so I will start demoing the game now. Here's the loading screen, basically. This is that font I was telling you about, the 13 Missa. Oh, I guess I pressed the key on accident. Anyway, that's where the circle around each capital letter is at. And then this is the text. I made this orange and pink since I tried to keep with the theme of this game. This person is Kerrigan, and she's the commander of a race called Zerg. It's one of the 3 races in Starcraft. The person you control is another race called the Terrans, which are basically humans. But that's not really need to know. There's a 3rd race that I don't use at all, even though I find them the coolest. Anyway, here are the instructions, as you can see, and then it says press any key to start. So I will now start the game. Here's my battleship, and here come the mutas. I gotta kill them quickly. As you can see in the top left, it shows my current kill count for mutalisks. Oh, this one's gonna get by. Oh no. Oh, there, I killed 4 in a row. Oh, he got by. Oh, he got by. I'm gonna end up dying. In the bottom left, you see the current level I'm at. And then, as you can see, the picture changed when I was taking damage. It's going to turn to red now. I'm at 25 kills. I don't think I'm going to make it. Nope, he's going to get by. I'm dead. And if you notice, it changed level 1 to 2. And here's the game over screen. Oh, and it closed because of the game over screen. Maybe I should increase that for the demo purposes. I'll change it to 15. Anyway, I'll play again. I'll also demonstrate being able to close and exit. So I just escape there. It closes it immediately, doesn't even wait to rest. And I also click X and it closes immediately. So now I'll play the game again. I have the health right below the ship, and it's not in the way of the ship turning. So I like that as well. Oh no, I'm gonna die. Ah. Now it changed, the ship color changed to yellow. He's gonna get by too. Oh, I'm gonna die. I'm dead. I only got 21 kills that time. I'll just go ahead and close out the game. Try again. I'd like to win at least one time. Or I can just rig the game and to show their winning screen if I'm terrible enough. I'm dead again. All right, I guess I'll just rig the screen. I actually beat it a few times off screen when I was testing. So I'll set this to 10 now. I'll also change this variable too. There. So now I only need 10 kills. Yeah, I'm a dirty cheater. Oh well. For the sake of demoing, I shall cheat. Get the win screen to appear. Ah, there we go. All right. I obliterated the Zerg, mission accomplished. I got 10 out of 10 kills, which is normally 50. That's the game over screen for winning. And as you saw a few times, that was the game over screen for losing. And it waits 15 seconds. I'll reduce it to maybe 8 before, once I turn in the code back to normal anyway. Anyway, set that back to 50. I'll play it one more time, try and win without cheating for once. See if I can get 50 kills without having to rig my own game. Doesn't look like that's gonna happen. Yeah, I'm already, wow, I did terrible. All right, I'll try one more time, and then I'll call it. You just gotta keep them under control as much as possible. But when they spread out so much, where you can't get multi kills with your weapon, it becomes hard. I might be able to do it now. Ah, I missed. Oh no! Oh, I'm gonna die. Oh, maybe not. Almost there. Don't kill me now. Alright, I got it. Hooray, I got 50 kills. I obliterated the Zerg. Mission accomplished. Alright, I believe that concludes this video for Computer Science 440, game number 3, created by Alex Brown. And I will see you next time for game number 4, which looks like a lot of fun because back in Computer Science 240 with Dr. Anawalt, we created a maze without graphics. It was text-based maze, basically. And I had a lot of fun with that, and I hope to have a lot of fun with game number 4 with you as well. See you next time.